everybody. Welcome. We will be starting shortly in just a minute. Please let me know if you are not able to hear me or see our shared screen. The screen should say the meeting will start shortly. Please raise your hand in the chat if you're not able to see or hear. Try it. Now we're ready, Katie.
Good morning, everyone. This is a sound check. Want to make sure that folks online can hear. Could I get a voice check from somebody that's calling in online and let me know that you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, welcome to this edition of the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan Task Force. We have gotten into an excellent flow, great conversations around the topic areas each time that we meet. And we're just really glad to have your participation today. And we will hopefully, there we go, slides advancing. Today's topic to be discussed is packaging, which is a huge topic. And we're going to get underway. This meeting is going to run for a few hours, so stick with us. We'll have opportunities for public and task force comment through all. We're going to begin. This meeting is a Sunshine Law meeting. We'll have a slide about that later. Introductions first. Most formally, we're going to I'll do a roll call of our Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan Task Force members. And if task force members, if you could please, when I call your name and you identify yourself, if you could please turn on your camera for the moment to ID yourself. And also, we're asking folks to identify if there's anybody else with you in the room, if you could identify that person as well. That's just for the task force members. So I'll begin with a roll call first. First we have Ahmad Sadri. Here. Ahmad is here in person. We had an email from Allison Fraley, County of Kauai, identifying that their staff were not going to be in attendance. So I just want to double check if Allison or Andrew did happen to join us, or a different representative from County of Kauai. Okay, we'll count that as an excuse.
Wait, let me see. I think.
Dominic Enrique, our recycling. Glenn, hi.
I'm here.
I'll be joining intermittently today. I have a bunch of Maui wildfire meetings also scheduled that I need to attend. So I'll be in and out.
Mahalo. Joe Hernandez, PBT. Christine Kubat, Recycle Hawaii.
Aloha. Yeah, I'm here. Not sure about the camera thing, but hi.
Okay. Hi,
I'm
we hear you.
okay.
Oh, got you. Thank you. There's no need to stay on camera through the whole meeting, task force members, especially if you're having internet bandwidth issues. So thanks for just flipping it on for a sec to acknowledge you, Christine. Nicole Chatterson, Zero Waste Oahu.
Good morning.
Hi, Nicole.
Hi.
Ramsey Mansauer, County of Hawaii, DEM.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning.
Aloha. Robert Schmidt, County of Maui, DEM.
Yes, good morning. You're alone in my office.
Aloha. And Sierra Club, Wayne Tanaka. Okay, we've got Dominic.
Yes, Dominic, thank you.
Aloha, Dominic. Thanks for joining.
And we also have Craig Kawaguchi, who may perhaps be filling in for someone. If you don't know, County of Hawaii.
Okay, Craig, you're filling in for Ramsey, County of Hawaii.
Ramsey's here.
Oh, we have.
I think Craig is also just like me.
Okay, so we have County of Hawaii represented.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Great. And then there was some interference, so just check, is there a representative from Sierra Club present? No. Okay, so we have Ahmad, Dominic, Glenn, Christine, Nicole, Ramsey or Craig, put that down, Robert, all present. Great. Okay, let's take care of introductions of our State of Hawaii Department of Health staff that are present.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Lane Otsu, Department of Health, acting solid waste coordinator. Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. I'm looking forward to a good meeting.
Hello, everyone. Raven Jimenez for our planner. Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming. Have a great day.
Thanks. And then the consultant team led by Tetra Tech.
Hello, good morning. So with Tetra Tech, the Solid Waste Management Planner, project manager for the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan update. Stella?
Hello, everyone. Gisela Herrera here with Tetra Tech, Solid Waste Planner. I'm also supporting on the development or the update to the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan.
Great. And then I'm Katie Cullison. I'm a planner with PBR Hawaii. We're helping support this project by connecting with all of you. And I'm joined by my colleagues over to my left.
Hi, everyone. Matt Nakamoto, planner at PBR Hawaii.
And Sunny Rosario.
Yes, hi everyone, Sunny Rosario, planner as well with PBR Hawaii.
Thanks. And then we have one guest in the room, if you don't mind. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Thanks for making the trip up here.
Yeah, I was in town, David Thorpe with the American Beverage Association.
David, thank you. And then for guests that are not task force members or the consultant team that just introduced yourselves, if you don't mind, just identify yourself in the chat and let us know who you are. That would be great. And then we'll have a record of everybody that attended by your name in the chat. So that would be fantastic. The agenda should be showing up on your screen. Beginning with the roll call that we just completed, we're going to have some time for public comment. We're going to wrap up on construction and demolition waste. We're going to dedicate 30 minutes to summarizing our last convening of this group. Then we're going to move on to packaging to discuss the problem statement that the consultant team and Department of Health have developed. Moving on to discussing potential solutions. As in past meetings, there'll be a comparative analysis, kind of looking at best practices on the mainland and elsewhere. Opportunity for public comments then, and then we'll have a discussion, hopefully on the potential solutions. There'll be opportunity for task force and public comment after that discussion or through that discussion. Then we'll do a meeting summary, wrap up, and talk about next steps and our next meeting. So that's our agenda, and what we like to do with every one of these meetings is offer the opportunity to guests from the public that are here that maybe can't stick around for 3-4 hours to give their thoughts on the agenda. But before we do that, let me just remind you about the Sunshine Law, and that's our open meeting law for our state. And that's why we're doing a roll call, helping to, keep the meetings daylight that happen here, the discussion happens here, public. For the task force members, you're all seasoned pros, but just a reminder that conversations relating to the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan and our topic discussion should be occurring in this meeting forum. And if you wish to, have a more in-depth conversation between yourselves outside of this public venue, we would need to establish a permitted interaction group. So just some reminders on Sunshine Law. And then, of course, there's just the matter of aloha and meeting ground rules. Please be respectful and extend your aloha to others. You can raise your hand on the Teams to speak, and everybody's figured that out pretty well through these meetings, so appreciate that. And we'll go on and have another productive meeting. Thank you so much. I think now we're going to open it up for public comments. And so this is just a call to any members of the public that are in attendance at this time, maybe can't stick around for the whole meeting, and have any preliminary comments if you could just raise your hand and Sunny and Matt will call on you and we'll make sure that you're heard. We'll just hold this time open now for a few seconds and look for any raised hands.
Or if you'd like, please drop a note in the chat. For those of you who are calling in, feel free to unmute yourself at any point in time, since I don't believe you have a raise hand feature. Seeing none so far?
Okay, no worries. Sorry, clarification, do we not have a raise hand feature?
Oh, no, for those like on the phone.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay. Let's move into our discussion and presentation.
Alrighty, thank you, Katie, and good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here today. So we will now be transitioning into the wrap up of the discussions that we had at our previous task force meeting in January. So these next few slides will be discussing potential solutions for consideration in the enhancement of C&D management here in the state of Hawaii. Next slide. So we always start off these task force meetings by going through US EPA's waste hierarchy and using that as a guideline as we evaluate these potential solutions. So as you can see here, US EPA has categorized and prioritized these waste management strategies by most effective to least effective, starting with the most effective, which would be to reduce or minimize the amount of waste being produced, followed by reuse or using materials more than once. We also have recycle compost or using materials to make new products, as well as energy recovery And then lastly, the least desirable option for managing waste would be to dispose of it in the landfill. Next slide. And the state has also identified 5 solution categories to consider, as you can see listed here on the screen. So these are the solutions that we have been evaluating for each of these different topics. And these solutions include extended producer responsibility, which assigns producers the responsibility for the end-of-life management of their products. We also have less wasteful or resource reduction alternatives, government programs and subsidies, outreach and education, as well as free market solutions. Next slide. Okay, so going into the discussion topics that we went over at our last meeting. So these were topics that were presented, and then the next slide will be discussing additional comments that we received from the public and task force members. So for solutions that we discussed, for EPR, we discussed existing take-back programs in the US for certain C&D materials, including ceiling tiles as well as carpet. For resource reduction alternatives, we also discussed the importance of supporting local reduce and reuse alternatives, including deconstruction workshops, as well as different types of alternatives to traditional building materials, as you can see on the right-hand side. So for example, bamboo, hempcrete, cork, green roofs, mycelium, rammed earth, indigenous building materials, and construction techniques. Regarding government programs and subsidies, we discussed grant opportunities through US EPA, including the Reducing Embodied Greenhouse Gas Emissions for Construction Materials and Products grant program, and the Solid Waste Infrastructure for Recycling grant program as well. We also discussed local grant opportunities in Maui through the Green Grants program and the recycling program as well. We also discussed considering regulations to establish minimum diversion requirements for construction projects, similar to those in California's Green Building Codes, as well as California Senate Bill 1374. Other potential solutions related to policy development included consideration of regulations that establish deconstruction requirements, such as those in San Antonio, Texas, and their Deconstruction and Circular Economy program. Seattle, Washington also had a residential deconstruction permit that we were evaluating at our last task force meeting. Other regulations for consideration in the state of Hawaii also included the increasing of capacity to manage C&D materials locally, as well as encouraging business development. For example, Nashville, Tennessee has a proposed ordinance on commercial C&D materials to increase local capacity. For outreach and education, we talked about EPA's publicly accessible educational resources, which includes a design for deconstruction manual. They also have a residential deconstruction manual and a deconstruction rapid assessment tool. We also discussed the importance of supporting local reduce and reuse efforts, such as training and workshops, as well as the development and distribution of educational resources. Another topic of discussion was Honolulu County's Tour de Trash program, which educates the public on solid waste management and the implementation of sustainable practice. And they have previously in the past conducted C&D recycling tours. For free market solutions, we talked about Reuse Hawaii, and we also had a speaker from Reuse Hawaii, and they salvage unwanted C&D materials for redistribution. We also discussed using recycled aggregate from crushed concrete or asphalt for use in roads, as well as untreated wood for engineered wood products such as furniture. And then in Kauai and Maui, some private nurseries also accept new drywall and incorporate it into their compost and soil amendments. And in addition, all counties or all islands have facilities for recycling clean wood waste, often by grinding and incorporating into composting operations. In addition, all islands have facilities to recycle metals, and because recyclers pay for scrap metals, there is also an economic incentive for the recovery of these metal materials. Next slide. So we received additional input on potential solutions to consider, and those are listed here on the screen. So for EPR, we highlighted the importance of upstream innovation or rethinking products and services at the design stage. For resource reduction alternatives, we discussed the need to transition from a linear economy to a circular economy in order to keep C&D products and materials in use. Another potential solution that was mentioned was enhancing public accessibility to reusable C&D materials, as well as the development of an online network to foster businesses to foster business-to-business connections to match unwanted material C&D or unwanted C&D to opportunities for reuse. And in addition, we also talked about the importance of supporting the deconstruction and reuse of C&D materials to reduce emissions, as well as enforcing requirements for consultations with deconstruction and bioremedial experts prior to any construction and demolition activities. Regarding government programs and subsidies, we discussed the incorporation of soil remediation into C&D activities. We also discussed establishing regulations to set C&D diversion requirements, as well as regulations to establish a minimum percentage of alternative materials requirement for construction projects. Another potential solution that was highlighted was facilitating the permitting process for C&D facilities. So for example, this could be done through funding, as well as the siting and permitting of a new mixed commingled C&D facility and landfill in the state of Hawaii. We also discussed establishing centralized collection sites for various C&D materials at existing transfer stations, as well as seeking grant opportunities and establishing financial incentives for meeting diversion goals. Additionally, we discussed increasing the cost of landfilling for C&D materials to encourage deconstruction, as well as ensuring the recirculation of C&D prior to exploring gasification as an option. We also highlighted the importance of enforceable policies and proposing them to the state. We emphasize the need to continue discussions among task force members. And lastly, for free market solutions, we talked about focusing on markets for common C&D materials. In addition, we talked about how there's a lot of waste in C&D that is not marketable, and therefore we need to look at ways to create grades of material source separation.
So that takes us to our first opportunity for public comment. We had a very good discussion last time about construction and demolition waste, but this would be a chance for any guests that were in attendance last time or are new to us and this task force. If you heard a solution that Zella reflected from our last meeting, that you feel like is specific, or particularly implementable here in Hawaii, or if you felt like there was a gap in the note-taking, this would be a great time to share that with us now. So we'll just hold the space open for any guests, and then we'll have a similar question posed to the task force to follow public comments. So anyone from the public wish to comment on construction and demolition waste summary?
Hi, this is Ruta Jordans from Kauai. May I talk?
Yes, go ahead, Ruta.
I just watched the webinar on the denailing from the people in Phoenix. They were showing robotics that remove the nails from used wood, lumber, and I wonder if you have looked into that.
We will add to the list.
Thank you. We can add that to the list of investigations for the Tetra Tech folks to look into and update the Department of Health on. Appreciate it, Ruta. Any other comments from the public? If not, we can move on to pose the similar question to the task force members that were present last time. If there were any of the potential solutions presented that you most heartily endorse or feel are the most implementable, we would welcome that comment now.
Christine has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Christine, thanks.
Aloha, good morning. Yes, wanting to emphasize the need for ordinances at the county level that would prevent the landfilling or wasting of valuable construction materials. Also looking for ways to this could make districts can gain.
Christine? Hi, Christine. We're having a little trouble hearing your audio. The past 10 seconds, we had you kind of coming in and out.
Okay, so I think we have the same thing happening that happened last time. There's someone typing and I can hear that person really loud. And then somehow you can't hear me when we can hear that.
Okay.
So this.
Maybe I'll
Okay,
I'll
give
keep
us a
the
second.
note taking over here. Do you think it's me or do you think it's you?
Well, the mic is over there, so I'm gonna move that to the table. If you give us a second, we're gonna move the microphone, and then if you don't mind repeating what you just said.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe this.
No, we're not for accusations, but I think we'll be okay, because this doesn't have the mic jack.
Okay, bear with us, we're gonna move mics around a little bit.
Do you mind just doing the test type real fast? How is that online? Could someone online give us audio feedback if you can hear the typing now?
I cannot hear it. This is Nicole.
Okay, thank you, Nicole. Okay, we've readjusted our mic positions. And then Christine, if you don't mind repeating your last two sentences.
We heard, Christine, we heard the emphasize the need, that your emphasis for the need for ordinances, and then we lost you after that.
Okay, so the ordinances that ban. Okay, now there's an echo. Okay, try again. Ordinances that ban the wasting of construction materials, strategies that allow people to have access to the materials. These are all things that were in there, and I'm wanting to emphasize those, you know, to rise to the top so that people who are going to make use of the materials have access. And then the third thing is bioremediation. There's really a lot of reasons in the whole waste management area to be looking more towards bioremediation. This is a really good place to start. Thank you.
Thank you. We heard you very clearly, so appreciate your patience with us on our side. Other task force members wanted to highlight any of the solutions that were presented as particularly implementable here in Hawaii. Sunny, I see one hand up on the screen. Is that a
Nicole has her hand raised. Yes.
Okay, Nicole, go ahead.
Hi. I also hear an echo now.
Yeah.
Okay, the echo is gone. I wanted to point out that focusing first on enabling reuse of materials is going to be a lot less expensive than figuring out how to build a new landfill or a new C&D processing facility. And while we're likely going to need one, at least on the island of Oahu, that is a downstream measure that should not be as much of a priority as the upstream measures of reducing our waste footprint. And I also wanted to touch on some of the input we've got from folks like in the Building Industry Association that deconstruction is more expensive. And I think Quinn's presentation from Reuse Hawaii last year or last session highlighted that there's actually enormous tax benefits. So it's a win-win. It's less expensive for municipalities and less expensive for everyone. So that's my addition. Could you hear me okay? I was a little unclear if the sound went in and out. Okay, great.
No, you were great.
No, you're totally clear. Thanks.
And if I just may ask a quick question, sorry, another technical question. We just did another microphone readjustment in the room. How is the feedback, and is anybody able to hear the typing now?
I'm just gonna try talking. I'm not getting any echo for myself.
Okay, wonderful. Is anybody able to hear typing? I'm gonna take that as a yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Everybody, light fingers, please. In the room.
Okay. Well, I think the typing is an unavoidable audio thing for now, but we'll try to look into that for next time. We'll try to type very light fingers, ballerina fingers for this time. So I apologize for this meeting. We'll just have to grin and bear it for a bit, but we'll look into that for next time. But thanks for checking the echo issue, guys.
Sonny, I can take notes from over here if you think it's yours.
Okay. Yeah. We'll just wait.
Okay. Okay, super. Thanks everybody for your patience. Okay. Were there any other task force members that wanted to chime in on C and D? Otherwise, we'll move on to our packaging discussion.
I think you're good, Katie. I don't see any hands nor chats.
Okay. We can move on to an introduction related to packaging and get on with that discussion. We're running about 10 minutes early, so that's I think we hand off to Cesar now? Or Gisela?
Yes.
Gisela, okay, take it back away, Gisela.
Alrighty, thank you, Katie. So yes, we will now be transitioning into the topic of this meeting, which is packaging materials.
Sorry, 1 second, it's just loading.
All right, so as you all can see here on the screen, we developed a problem statement for packaging, which can also be found in the meeting agenda if you would like to go back and review in greater detail. In summary, the main problems related to the management of packaging include high generation and disposal rates, which have significantly increased as a result of the pandemic, as well as global consumer behavioral shifts due to convenience. So for example, online shopping and preference for takeout. So we're just going to do a quick overview of current baseline conditions in the state of Hawaii regarding regulations that have been passed to manage some items that may be considered packaging materials, such as paper, plastic bags, as well as polystyrene food packaging. And then in the next slide, we'll go into the individual counties. So for the state as a whole, Hawaii Revised Statutes 342G-3 establishes a source reduction target of 25% of office paper that is generated by all state and county agencies. Revised Statutes 342G-41 requires the state and county public agencies to give preference to the purchase of products made from recycled materials that are themselves recyclable and that are designed for durability. HRS 342G-42 requires the Department of Accounting and General Services to develop the Recycled Product Procurement Program. Revised Statutes 342G-44 promotes double-sided copying as a standard operating practice for all state and county agencies, offices, and facilities as available and appropriate. 342G-45 requires all state and county agencies to establish an office paper and other materials recovery program. Hawaii Revised Statutes 103D-1005 encourages state agencies to give preference to bidders who use recycled content materials. Act 254 created the statewide plastic source reduction working group, who was responsible for submitting a report to the legislator of its findings and recommendations for reducing and recovering plastic from Kauai's waste stream. I missed one. HRS 321. Oops. So 321-62 states that it shall be unlawful to manufacture, sell, offer for sale, distribute for sale, or distribute for sale in the state any food packaging to which PFAS chemicals have been intentionally added or introduced in any amount beginning December 31st, 2024. And this will apply to wraps and liners, plates, food boats, and pizza boxes. We also have some recently proposed bills related to packaging that we thought were worth mentioning as well. So HB 2399 was proposed in 2022, and it would have established an EPR program requiring certain producers of fast-moving consumer goods to register with the DOH, as well as pay an annual fee. It also would have allocated the deposit of fees into an EPR special fund for the development of a report to assess the resources needed to reduce packaging waste sent to landfills. Another proposed regulation, this was in 2023, House Bill 85. It was a proposed bill to prohibit lodging establishments from providing personal care products in plastic containers. However, the measure was deferred. Another bill that was introduced in 2023 was House Bill 1326, a proposed bill to establish a statewide program to reduce packaging waste by 70% by 2030 and require producers of certain packaging materials to fund the program. And if enacted, the bill would task the state DOH with collaborating with relevant parties to develop a reuse program. It would also require DOH to conduct a statewide assessment of resources that would be needed to reduce each county's packaging waste. And lastly, it would also require the development of the Zero Waste Initiative, in which the DOH would facilitate the transition into a circular economy through establishing reduction goals and programs to maximize reuse, seeking market-based solutions, as well as providing annual reports to the legislator on the progress of the initiative. SB 2427 was introduced this year. It was introduced this year, and it would amend HRS 321 to expand on the materials prohibited for manufacturing, sale, offer for sale, distribution for sale, and distribution to also include food service ware, cosmetic, or personal care products that contain intentionally added PFAS. And this bill was introduced in January 2024. It did pass the first reading, and it was referred to the Agricultural and Environment and Commerce and Consumer Protection Committees. And then lastly, House Bill 1688 is another proposed bill that was introduced this year. And it would require an appropriate funds for the DOH to conduct a statewide needs assessment with county packaging producers and stakeholder inputs to determine what would be needed to transition to a more circular economy with less waste generation, more reuse, and the necessary infrastructure to sort as well as locally process recyclable materials through an EPR program for packaging materials as well as paper products. So now going into the individual counties, starting with Hawaii County. So County Ordinance 1763 prohibits food service vendors from providing food to a customer in disposable or single-use polystyrene food serviceware. County Code Chapter 20, Article 5, and Solid Waste Rule 2-10 related to polystyrene identifies the prohibitions, requirements, exemptions, as well as administrative fines for violations related to polystyrene. County Ordinance 12-1 prohibits businesses from providing plastic checkout bags to their customers. And then solid waste rule 2-11 identifies the prohibitions, exemptions, permissible bags, and administrative fines for the violations related to plastic bags. In addition, in 2007, adopted resolution 356-07, also known as a resolution to embrace and adopt the principles of zero waste as a long-term goal in Hawaii County. And this specific resolution highlights the zero waste philosophy of solid waste management and commits to taking necessary steps towards incorporating zero waste philosophy into legislation, policies, and actions. In Honolulu County, City Ordinance Chapter 42-1.7 sets disposal limits for commercial and government trucks to a maximum of 10% cardboard per load. And City Ordinance Chapter 42-31 or 3.1 requires office buildings greater than 20,000 square feet to recycle office paper, newspaper, and cardboard. And per City Ordinance Chapter 42-1.11, city agencies are required to recycle newspaper, cardboard, office paper, aluminum, glass, and plastics through government mandatory recycling program. Chapter 42, Article 9 of the revised ordinances of Honolulu regulates the types of bags provided to customers in Oahu. And Ordinance 19-30 restricts the use and sale of polystyrene foam foodware, disposable plastic foodware, and additionally dictates when disposable serviceware may be provided. In addition, last year, Honolulu City Council approved Bill 47, which will allow residents to recycle certain packaging materials such as paper bags, certain takeout containers, coffee pods, and other manufactured compostable materials. So those will all be accepted in the green bin for curbside collection beginning April 2025. In Kauai, Ordinance 902 bans the landfill disposal of commercially generated loads exceeding 10% of corrugated cardboard by volume, similarly to Honolulu. In addition, the County of Kauai has a Bill 2775, which was also sent into an ordinance, Ordinance 109, Article 27, Chapter 22. And this ordinance restricts the use and sale of polystyrene food containers. In 2020, a resolution was also signed prohibiting the purchase, use, or distribution of disposable plastics, such as water bottles, plastic bags, beverage straws, cutlery, plastic food service containers, and plastic stirrers with county funds at county permitted events by county employees or by county facility users. In Maui County, County Ordinance 3587, also known as the Plastic Reduction Ordinance, was signed into law in 2010. And it prohibits businesses from providing plastic bags to customers. Ordinance 5236 amends the original plastic bag ban to disposable body boards as well. County of Maui Ordinance 4457 was signed into law in 2016, and it restricts the use and sale of polystyrene foam food service containers. And the purposes of all these ordinances is really just to encourage the use of environmentally preferred alternatives, such as reusable bags and containers made from recyclable and compostable materials. Next slide.
Thank you, Zella, for the summary. Came up on that through that fast. So now it's time to open up the conversation to guests and members of the public. If you feel like there were areas of the problem statement that are missed, or if you wanted to highlight any elements of the problem statement that we've prepared and shared with you today, now would be a great time to let the team know so that we can continue to follow these research threads. So opening it up to any members of the public. Okay, and then we'll have a similar question for our task force members. Are there additional problems associated with packaging materials that the team hasn't identified? Or any elements of the problem statement that you particularly like Department of Health to highlight and focus in on with the solid waste management plan? Open it up to task force members, please raise your hand.
We have Christine.
Go ahead, Christine.
Aloha. I tried to give somebody else's time to jump in there, but whatever, here I am. Okay, on the problem statements. On the problem statement, something that's really missing is that there's no discussion about exposure to toxic chemicals and microplastic pollution, which gets introduced into consumer goods from the processing. There is so much information about this now. This is really important. People are alarmed about it. Scientists, health professionals. It's very alarming. And it would be doing everyone a greater service, especially the state and policymakers, if that was brought out. Also, there should be some discussion about the extent to which packaging and so-called convenience in packaging is displacing local food production, and how the more we rely on imported goods in packaged, in packaging, detracts us, moves us away from local food production. I'm curious as to why, when you listed the bills that have been introduced that were worth mentioning, you didn't mention Senate Bill 1458. This is a bill, the philosophy and approach that our organization has been championing, and this is an approach to EPR, which is strictly about reuse. I think it would be really important for the task force members to know about this, and I would really like to see us getting into a deep discussion, because anyone who's analyzing the situation would know there's a divide among environmental groups working in this area. Some are really very much in favor of producer response, a certain type of EPR, others are not. And so I think it would be really important at some level, and I do think it's part of the problem statement, that there is this clear divide, and that's going to have to get breached if we're going to be able to move ahead.
Thank you, Christine. So 3 points that I heard was relating to exposure to microplastics, discussing packaging and convenience, and how the convenience of packaged foods displaces demand for local food. And then, just to clarify, it was Senate Bill 1458?
Yes, correct.
Okay, great. Just wanted to check, make sure we heard you right. And recognizing the need or identifying the need to recognize the divide in philosophies relating to EPR in the problem statement. Thank you. Are there other members of the task force that wish to?
You missed something.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Yeah, you missed something very important. It's not just microplastics, it's chemicals. So there's a lot of hormone disrupting chemicals that are in plastic packaging. And when you put dairy products, for instance, in a plastic package, those chemicals from the plastic migrate into the dairy products. One of the worst things you can feed your kids right now is prepackaged macaroni and cheese. It happens every day. This is a serious problem. And we need to talk about this when it comes to packaging. The migration of toxic chemicals from packaging into the consumable goods.
Thank you for clarifying.
And we do have Nicole with her hand raised.
Go ahead, Nicole.
Thank you. I put my headphones in. Can you all still hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. 2 points, sort of building off of what Christine was just discussing with toxic chemicals. Act 247, or sorry, Act 47, which was mentioned in the City and County of Honolulu, as a mechanism to recycle and compost food packaging. Department of Health is actually not permitting any local facilities to take that compostable food packaging because of concerns around toxic constituents in the food packaging, primarily PFAS, but other ones. So that's a big, there's a lot of qualifications there, and I think that should be updated for the record. I'm sad Glenn left because I'm sure he could share more about that. The other thing I wanted to highlight is there's a landscape here that's not being clarified. So packaging is such a broad term. There's plastic packaging, there's non-plastic packaging, there's food service packaging, there's other product packaging. And I want to point out that as we're talking about this, I think we're going to keep bouncing between different scales and types of materials. I noticed beverage bottles are even included. So in a lot of these conversations, these different packaging streams are parsed out, and it is going to make our task a little difficult. So just highlighting that. And there was actually one last thing, which is in the problem statement, we need to add there's a lack of reusables infrastructure. So I've heard the term recycling come up, which is an important tool. I've heard reusables come up less, and I think that needs to be integrated into our problem statement, that we don't have the infrastructure for it. So thank you guys. Great start.
Thank you. Other comments from task force members?
We have one from the public, Lauren.
Let's leave this time open for task force members, and we'll circle back around to the public because we are running ahead of time.
Okay, sounds good. Lauren, if you could just hold on, keep your hand raised, and we'll allow our task force members to provide their comments first.
Anybody else from the task force wish to comment? Okay, thanks, Lauren, for your patience. We can circle back around in plenty of time.
Katie, before we, sorry, I did see Christine's hand just pop up.
Okay, Christine, you want to finish your thought, and then we'll switch over to Lauren?
Yeah, just in general, this is an area where we're very active. So I feel I have a lot to contribute. I'm going to try to make space for other people, but if other people don't jump up, I'm just going to keep coming back. So here, I think it's worthwhile mentioning that in these different ordinances, there's a provision that says, oh, you can't use, we're going to ban a single-use food service or packaging item. And then, oh, if it's plastic and it's a certain weight, then it's going to be considered reusable or even recyclable. And the truth of it is that these materials are neither recyclable nor reusable because they're often contaminated with food. There's no practical way to wash them and actually recycle them, so that you see this on our island with all these takeout containers. Now, all of a sudden, oh, it's okay to use these thicker plastic takeout containers. No one is collecting them. And even if they did, they wouldn't be able to wash them and recycle or reuse them. So just wanting to have people be aware of that in order for these ordinances to do what we want them to do, this exclusion for recyclable, reusable containers, if there's no infrastructure to do that, then they should not be allowed to be used.
Thank you.
Lauren?
Lauren, I think you're up now. Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, here you go ahead.
So I'm sorry, I may have used the wrong link. This is Lauren Zorbel. I actually am on the task force for the Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Lauren, we don't have you currently on our task force roster. Are you perhaps filling in for someone today?
No. I'm with, maybe this is a different, okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted to say,
Go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, yeah, maybe I'm thinking of a different task force. So I actually did participate in a working group with the city council. Maybe I'm thinking of a different one, the IMWRP. Is that in conjunction with this, or is that separate?
No, I believe we're a separate task force, but we welcome, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's why. Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to mention, like, you know, a lot of these bills, we don't really testify on them as much anymore, but it is important to keep in mind, because we've been working with, you know, Department of Education on like their attempt to integrate more local foods into, you know, the procurement process for feeding children here. And one of the big, you know, impediments on that too is around packaging. So I think it is kind of important to keep in mind, like, what types of packaging are available for local food producers currently, and are we hindering their ability to submit RFPs on, you know, on these RFPs for, you know, improving our food that we're providing to school children, because a lot of the times plastic packaging containers is the only type of packaging that is available for local food producers, because we don't currently have, let's say, a steel canning facility anywhere in the state. So just something to kind of keep in mind when we're looking at these issues. Thank you.
Thank you for bringing up the cross collision of good intentions. Any other final comments on the problem statement itself? Open it up to anybody. 9:25, and so we could roll into the discussion or the presentation on potential solutions, if we're okay.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right, we'll move ahead into presentation on potential solutions and hand back to Tetra Tech staff. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Katie. We can go to the next slide. Okay, so similarly to the way we started this meeting, we wanted to just introduce the baseline conditions of what's going on within the U.S. as a whole. So there are no nationwide packaging landfill disposal bans in the U.S. However, 12 states have implemented their own single-use plastic bag fees or bans, including California, Colorado, Connecticut, Delaware, Hawaii, Maine, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, Rhode Island, Vermont, and Washington. In addition to these states, local counties and municipalities have enacted their own plastic bag fees or bans as well in other states. And then on the next slide, we have a map of the states with single-use plastic bag bans or fees. Next slide. In addition, 10 states have implemented polystyrene foam ban and restrictions. We already discussed those that exist here in Hawaii. Other states that have implemented similar bans include Colorado, Delaware, Maine, Maryland, New Jersey, New York, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. And as the case with plastic bags, some local municipalities have also enacted their own polystyrene foam bans outside of these states. And then here we just have another map with states and cities and counties that have already banned polystyrene foam, as well as those who are considering banning them in the future. So at a federal level, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act, which we already discussed at our statewide recycling programs meeting on the High Five program. So this act was introduced back in 2020 and reintroduced in 2021, and it would require producers with annual revenues greater than $1 million or who produce more than 1 ton of covered products to design, manage, and finance programs in order to collect and process this waste. Producers would cover the cost of waste management, cleanup, and awareness-raising measures. And the products that would be covered under this act include packaging, containers, paper, and food service products, regardless of their ability to be recycled, composted, and their material type, including plastic, paper, glass, metal, etc. However, the bill failed to advance, and it was reintroduced last year in October. So this updated version of the act expands upon earlier versions of the bill, and it requires all single-use beverage containers and packaging to be reusable, recyclable, or compostable. It also establishes robust requirements for incorporating post-consumer recycled content into beverage containers. And it also includes stronger language regarding toxic substances elimination in beverage containers. Although the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act assigns the responsibility to the FDA for ensuring the safety of packaging, the National Environmental Policy Act, also known as NEPA, also requires the FDA to evaluate the environmental impact of packaging. The FDA's assessment focuses on the use and disposal of packaging materials and primarily its recycling impact. One way in which the EPA has sought to increase recycling is by encouraging government procurement of recycled products. Specifically, Section 6002 of the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act requires the EPA to develop guidelines for government agencies to use in the procurement of products containing recycled materials. We also have listed here Executive Order number 14057. Specifically, Section 207 states that each agency shall minimize waste, including generation of waste requirement, treatment and disposal, advanced pollution prevention, support markets for recycled products, and promote a transition to a circular economy by annually diverting from landfills at least 50% of non-hazardous waste, including compostable materials, by fiscal year 2025, and by 75% in 2030. Section 208 of the executive order also states that agencies shall reduce emissions, promote environmental stewardship, support resilient supply chains, drive innovation, and incentivize markets for sustainable products and services by prioritizing products that can be reused, refurbished, or recycled, as well as maximizing environmental benefits and cost savings through the use of full life cycle cost methodologies, purchasing products that contain recycled content, are bio-based, or are energy and water efficient, and to the maximum extent practicable, purchasing sustainable products and services identified or recommended by the EPA.
One second.
In addition, with the increase in awareness around sustainability as well as resource management, many countries have started exploring new models to minimize the use of limited resources. The implementation of the circular economy has emerged as a potential model to minimize the negative impact of packaging waste on the environment. And then here on the screen, we do have a diagram that presents the stages of circular economy in which products are manufactured, marketed, and delivered using recycled content. Products are designed to be recycled, and products are collected, processed, and recycled into new products. We will now be transitioning into a couple of presentations that we have from two speakers. So we do have Lucy Pierce from the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, as well as Doug Cobbold from the California Product Stewardship. So we will be starting with Lucy.
Okay. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you all today. I really appreciate your time, and I'm excited to talk with you about the nonprofit that I work for, Green Blue. Next slide, please. I don't control that, do I?
No, sorry.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, so Green Blue is an environmental nonprofit dedicated to empowering a diversity of stakeholders to promote a more sustainable materials economy. We have 7 programs that fall under the Green Blue umbrella, and I work under our largest program, which is the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, or SPC. The SPC is a membership-based collaboration that believes in the power of industry to make packaging more sustainable. We take a life cycle approach to packaging, starting with sourcing all the way through to the end of life considerations, and encourage all of our members to see the whole picture of a package. Next slide. Our members represent a broad range of supply chain positions. We have over 600 member companies, and this is just a snippet of some of the larger brand and retailer members. We also have members who are government agencies, for example, the City of Seattle and the Washington Department of Ecology, universities like the Fashion Institute of Technology and Western Michigan University, as well as consulting firms and other design agencies. And the ultimate goal of having a variety of members is to strengthen the business case for more sustainable packaging. Next slide, please. Sustainable packaging is core to our name and our work. So how do we define it? Well, we recently updated our thinking around this and proposed 5 principles of design for sustainable packaging. So we believe sustainable packaging is packaging that uses smart design, which I'll explain a bit more. Advances the use of recycled materials and or sustainably sourced renewable feedstocks, is designed for reusability, recyclability, or compostability, and labeled with appropriate end-of-life instructions. And in addition to these 3, we felt that we should add some more context on the packaging product system to help paint a more holistic picture. We believe companies working on sustainable packaging should also work on ensuring that the product package system engages with reuse and refill models and invests in the growth of recycling and composting infrastructure, collection, and access, because we all know that packaging is not created in a vacuum, but rather we have interconnected systems that have different touch points for packaging and products. Next slide, please. Going back to smart design. So smart design of sustainable packaging entails the following principles. Systems approach is considering the product packaging system and the environmental footprint of the product that the package is protecting. Material health is also known as safe and circular and serves as a guide against environmental health impacts. Accessibility refers to the social implications of packaging that is easy to use and open to all individuals, including those with disability, limited dexterity or mobility, and our aging populations. And reduction and elimination might be the most straightforward. Over-packaging results in unnecessary use of materials and energy. And finally, life cycle thinking. This is packaging that considers all aspects of the life cycle of a package, from material sourcing, extraction, manufacturing, distribution, use by a consumer, and the end of life or disposal. Next slide, please. So we've gone through what the SPC considers principles of sustainable packaging, and now I wanted to highlight some of our resources that are available to everyone, not just members. Almost all of our resources are open to the public and on our website. And most relevant to this meeting would be our guide to EPR proposals. Next slide. The Guide to EPR Proposals is our online web tool where we break down EPR for packaging and paper bills in the United States. We started the tool back in 2021, so we've been doing this for a few years now. And essentially, any EPR for packaging bill that's introduced in the US is reviewed, analyzed, and uploaded to our tool. Next slide, please. We break all the bills down by element. So those elements are listed here. We developed these elements after reading EPR bills and other texts and realizing there were a lot of common themes throughout many of the EPR bills. So take covered products, for example, the top left icon. All EPR bills have covered products, but they vary from bill to bill. So in this instance, the covered product category breaks down into smaller ones for things like packaging materials, beverage bottles, exemptions, and paper products. If a bill has an exemption for, say, paint or medical devices or gas canisters, then that would be listed in the exemption category under the covered products section. And again, these are for packaging EPR bills. So those products might be covered under other EPR laws. Next slide. Thanks. In the next section, I wanted to cover some of the themes that we're seeing in the US for packaging policy, EPR, post-consumer recycled content laws, and deposit return systems. Last year, 11 states introduced EPR for packaging and paper product bills. And there were already 4 bills that had passed: Maine, Oregon, Colorado, and California. But overall, the number of bills introduced has grown. This year, we're seeing 9 or so bills introduced currently. And as a note, this is not fully encompassing all bills with any mention of EPR. In our tool, we don't track needs assessment bills, or sometimes people call these pre-PR instead of EPR, but we are aware of them. Next slide, please. So this is a list of some elements to consider when thinking about EPR. This isn't an official position of the SPC, but rather for a few years, after analyzing EPR bills in the US for packaging, these are just some of the elements that could be important to consider. Eco-modulation of fees is key to helping drive change in packaging and help get us better data and more information on packaging systems. It's really important to ensure that an EPR bill is funding improvements to the systems in place, like MRFs, collection, other operations. And of course, considering composting and reuse and refill in EPR. Social equity principles, so things like fair labor practices, community engagement, essentially making sure you're considering who is working as a part of the system. An advisory board can be extremely helpful, getting different perspectives and helping understand where the hurdles to improving our waste systems are. And lastly, the one big question we think it's really important to ask is, what is it that you need to be successful? What is your North Star? Next slide, please. Another policy area is post-consumer recycled content, or PCRC. And this policy is an attempt to create change in the life cycle diagram on my left. So generally, a PCRC law requires recycled content in new products. In this case, packaging is the product. And some important things to consider are harmonization. Just a handful of states have laws on the books around this, but what do they look like? Are there similarities that you can work with? Innovation, allowing producers to have room to innovate around different materials. And packaging format. Some products lend themselves to recycled materials better, whereas others are more challenging, and we need better innovation here. For example, rigid containers and non-food contact items are generally a little bit easier to include PCRC in. And collection and end markets. So we need to support greater collection so we can gather more materials to go to developed end markets where they can begin the loop again. And next slide, please. Last but not least, deposit return systems. So overall, the important elements of DRS surround value, convenience, and modernization. So ensuring the value of the container is high enough to incentivize a return, but not to cause pricing barriers. Allowing different options for redemption centers, so including bagging materials or unique drop-off locations. Updating to include beverage containers, things like kombucha and muscle milk didn't exist when these laws were first introduced. And of course, DRS is positioned to be a great opportunity to connect with reuse and refill opportunities. Can we co-locate depots or utilize refillable bottles, things like that? Next slide, please. So again, the SPC is a big group of all kinds of people who are working together to make packaging more sustainable, and we'd be happy to chat with anyone about membership or other ways to partner. And thank you all so much for your time.
Alrighty, thank you, Lucy, for that presentation. We're going to save the Q&A if anyone has any questions for Lucy till the end of Doug's presentation. So with that, I will pass it on to Doug. Doug, are you there? Oh yes, I see you.
I am here. Good morning.
Good morning.
Just wait for my slides to come up. There we go. All right. Well, I also want to thank everyone for having me come and present today on this very important topic. Packaging waste is absolutely a problem everywhere. We see it. You guys see it in the and certainly in the tropical areas, even more so, washing up on beaches. I certainly have always disappointed when I go to a beach and see a bunch of trash on it, and knowing that this could be avoided. A little bit about me. I am the executive director of the California Product Stewardship Council. We are a small 501c3 IRS 501c3 nonprofit that specializes mostly in producer responsibility. We look at product stewardship. And I'll give you a little bit of background on what we see under that realm of product stewardship. Our organization was actually formed back in 2007 out of local government. And so the majority of our board is actually local government representatives because the local governments back in 2007 wanted one voice in the Capitol. So you can see we have quite a few local government representatives, board members. We also have 4 private sector board members as well, because we do represent quite a few of the private sector entities as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Then there's also our staff, and we actually have added one more since this slide was, I created this slide. So we're now up to a staff of 8. I have some very excellent staff that does a lot of the work. I try not to take the credit. I try to give it to them and just make our board look good, and they make me look good. Staff does, so that helps me to make the board look good. Next slide. We are primarily funded by cities, counties, districts, and JPAs. Their annual contributions help us to do what we do, again, because we were formed out of local government. They felt it was important to keep this organization going and doing the work that it does. Next slide. But as I mentioned, we also have private sector sponsors that are also helping us to do the good work we do because we're all mission aligned. Next slide. So really quickly, Lucy kind of touched on this a little bit, I think, too. There are quite a few states out there with laws, EPR, product stewardship type laws out there. California currently leads the nation with the most product stewardship laws out there. They're all listed on the left. You can see the types of product categories that our laws cover. Next slide. Here's a little better information on those various laws, when they took effect, and who is primarily responsible for them, for operating them. I do have an update on packaging on the left down there, SB 54. It is now the Circular Action Alliance is the new product stewardship organization, or PRO. That we was recently assigned to run that program, and I'll get into that in more detail coming up. But this is pretty much breaking down who's actually financially responsible for these various programs, whether it be the producers themselves, or are there visible fees, or deposit return systems, which are more consumer responsibility because you and I actually pay for these things. Next slide. So that's where I get to our product stewardship umbrella, and where various programs in California lie under this umbrella, whether it be on the far left with the funding, the primary funding and responsibility being borne by the producers of those various products. So you can see those categories on the far left. On the far right, we have more of the products, the more consumer responsibility ones, where they're mostly either run by state government under visible fee programs, or maybe the industry is running them under a visible fee program. And smack dab in the middle is our California bottle bill. It's probably one of the oldest deposit return systems in the United States for beverage containers. That program has been running since 1982, I believe, was passed. And so, and it's been amended many, many times, but it's in the middle because it's actually run by the state of California. It's operated by the state of California and managed by the state, but there is a slight amount of producer responsibility in there for producers based on what they choose to package their product in. So if you're packaging your product in aluminum, you don't pay any extra fees because aluminum's got a high market value, scrap value. If you package it in glass, you're actually paying fees, additional fees they're called processing fees, because your glass, the value of the glass does not cover the cost of recycling and recovering and recycling. And so there's actual additional monies that are required there. And that pulls in more of the producer responsibility. Next slide. Okay, now I'll dive into our bill, SB 54, and that is the Plastic Pollution Prevention and Packaging Producer Responsibility Act. So we like to call it SB 54, just for the sake of our own sanity. But the whole idea here is to address the issues around single-use packaging and also focus in on plastic single-use foodware. You'll see the list of items that are covered under these. It is really to reduce the volume, increase the recycling, all these key points of what the bill is trying to tackle. And then also provide, one of the bigger keys is also fund the cleanup of the past. And so I'll go into that in some more detail, but there's a substantial amount of money tied to this law that is going to clean up our past sins. Next slide. So there's a lot of steps up until 2032, but we like to kind of just cut to the chase and say this is where we should be by 2032. 100% of the single-use packaging and single-use foodware should be recyclable or compostable. 65% of the single-use plastic packaging or foodware will be recycled. It's 30% by 2028 and 40% by 2030, and then 30 in 2032 by 65%. And then here is the source reduction and reuse component that is in the bill or in the law, and that is to have 25% of the single-use packaging and foodware be reduced by weight in units, 10% by 2027, with 2% going to be counted for as reuse or refill, and that's a minimum of 2%. That's not just 2; it's a minimum of 2%, and then 20% in 2030 with a minimum of 4% reuse and refill. So this is really starting to try and re-strengthen the reusable and refillable market, which is where we really want to go. Next slide. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a large amount of money that is tied to cleaning up the past sins. And that is the $5 billion Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund. It's $500 million over 10 years. It'll start on January 1 of 2027. This is going to be paid by the manufacturers. The Producer Responsibility Organization may be able to try and achieve 150 million of that, 500 million per year from the plastic resin manufacturers, but there's nothing in the law that says the resin manufacturers have to pay that. So if the plastic resin manufacturers don't want to pay that, it still has to come from the members of the PRO, the covered entities that have to pay for this whole program. The distribution of this $5 billion will be going to a variety of different agencies, focusing really on disadvantaged communities, low income communities. This is where a lot of these issues and a lot of this impact has happened, is in the disadvantaged communities. So there's a lot of focus on those folks that really need this to clean up this mess. Next slide. Here's more information on that same topic about where the rest of the money is going to go, the other 60%, and how that's going to be just spread out. Again, focusing on low income and disadvantaged communities to try and to help clean up this mess that's been created over the years. Next slide. So what is this thing going to do? One of the things is local governments have borne the costs of packaging, single-use packaging and foodware, all at the end of life all along. This is now shifting that burden to the producers of these products. They are now going to have to fund this collection, recycling, and processing for to go into new products. So feedstock for new products. So that's going to get fully funded. So that will mean that the local governments here in California will have to provide cost information to the PRO, so that they can establish fees on their members and it'll be equal modulated fees. You saw that in Lucy's presentation. Those are really good because it penalizes those that have the worst behavior and it rewards those with the best behavior. It's going to cover a whole broad brush of the process, from collection to sorting, cleaning, all those fun things. One of the other things it does in here is it also requires that these materials go to responsible end markets. And so responsible end markets will be defined in the regulations process, but they were partially defined in the statute to make sure that these things aren't just being shifted to some other country and it becomes their problem. So there is going to be a lot of emphasis on making sure that these things are done correctly. And then, of course, there's source reduction, which I talked about a little bit earlier in this. And then also there's a focus on education and outreach to make sure that what happens with this law and how this law is implemented actually makes sense to not only us in the industry, but also to the general consumers, who are the ones who have to kind of figure out, where does this go? What bin do I put this in? Is this thing really recyclable or not? Next slide. So another component of this bill that I find very interesting, I'm glad it was in here, was it's a potential ban on the expanded polystyrene, or EPS, for food service ware. And those are your clamshells, your styrofoam clamshells, etc. Now, the interesting part about this is they being in the industry, is going to need to prove to CalRecycle, the state agency, that they are recycling at least 25% of the the polystyrene packaging, foodware packaging that's going on the market, being put on the market in California. They have to establish that at least 25% is being recycled by 2025, so by next year. And they are currently in the single digits, about 8%. And so they've got quite a haul to make to get up to that 25%. If they do not, they can no longer distribute their material, their product, in California. So that's why it's kind of, some folks have called this a de facto ban. I call it a potential ban, because they quite possibly could meet these requirements. One of the questions I do have currently is whether or not how they're going to eliminate block styrofoam. Block styrofoam is currently not in the statute as being required for recycling, and therefore, but it will get in these same bales. And then is it going to be counted as recycled and then count for this 25% when it shouldn't, because it's not part of the law. So there will be some challenges that will need to be addressed as we move forward with the polystyrene portion of this bill. Next slide. So what are our local jurisdictions going to have to do now? Like I mentioned earlier, they have to figure out what is going to be the impact of these new requirements. How much is this going to cost them as local governments, so that they can pass that information on to the PRO, so that the PRO can then establish those appropriate fees to the member agencies that are the covered entities. Local governments may need to renegotiate their contracts with their haulers, because there may be certain provisions in their franchise agreements that don't either include these products or do. There's a lot of stuff that's going to happen here to try and figure out those components of it. And we need to know the effects of SB 54 on the ratepayers, because theoretically what's supposed to happen is this is going to take that cost burden off of the local ratepayers and put it on the producers. Now, initial estimates for this program are set at right now about $4 billion per year in California that will need to be absorbed by the producers. Next slide. So CalRecycle had many obligations under this law. One of them was to get a covered material category list established by January 1 of 2024, which they did do. There's some links right there on the slides. I assume that the folks on the task force will get these slides, and you'll be able to find this information on CalRecycle's website to see what is under the covered material categories. They did a supplemental list pretty quickly, just to add a couple more clarity items on this. Now, what's interesting is if the covered material is shown, category is shown on this list as a yes, meaning it can be collected, then jurisdictions will have to collect it. And this is where I get back to mentioning that the jurisdictions may need to go back and renegotiate their franchise agreements to allow or require their haulers to collect these materials that maybe they weren't collecting before, but are now being identified as must be collected. So this is one of the mandates on the jurisdictions, is that they have to collect at least what's on this list. Now they can collect more, but they cannot collect less. Next slide. Another thing that's coming into play here is actually a separate bill that was passed the year before this bill, and that was SB 343, which is what we like to call the Truth in Labeling Bill. It is actually addressing the utilization of the chasing arrows, which we're all very familiar with nowadays, as that is the recycle symbol. If it's got the chasing arrows on it, it must be recyclable. It must be getting recycled. That's not always the case. And so one of the requirements under SB 343 was that these materials be collected in at least 60% of the population, that it's got at least a recycling rate of 75% being made into new products or packaging, and that it has similar criteria to materials that are collected outside of a curbside program. Next slide. Another one that's included here that also is a separate law, but it impacts SB 54 is AB 1201. This is the one that is going to identify what products out there are actually truly compostable and can be accepted in compost programs, commercial compost programs statewide. It's nice to have products that say they are compostable, or biodegradable, and there are differences between those two terms. But are they really? Will a compost facility that's trying to produce organic compost take in cardboard type clamshell containers that have a polyfilm on them that could potentially release microplastics into the organic compost and therefore be a problem? So these folks will need to pass certain criteria, get through for example, the ASTM standards, and make sure that their product is qualified as compostable, but also to make sure that it's actually accepted by the compost facility statewide. If it's not accepted by them, then they cannot sell it in California. Next slide. Lucy mentioned advisory boards in her presentation. I happen to be a member of the SB 54 advisory board. I was elected vice chair of it. I'm one of the 13 voting members. I am not speaking on behalf of the advisory board today. I will make that very loud and clear. that I don't represent them today. I'm representing California Product Stewardship Council. We have 3 non-voting members as well on the board. And the representative is representative of the broad stakeholder group to make sure that what advice comes out of this board to both CalRecycle and to the PRO is sound advice on the producer plan, on annual reports, on the needs assessment. There is also a needs assessment that CalRecycle is conducting right now, or working on, about ready to conduct, to figure out what is needed for this program to succeed. So we have quite a few different obligations as the advisory board to make sure that this program is successful. Next slide. I just want to mention also that there are a lot of product stewardship councils out there in the States, in the mainland here. You see a whole bunch of them on the list here. If Hawaii was interested in developing a product stewardship council, might be an excellent idea for you. I can certainly help you to design that product stewardship council because you would like it to, you should be a nonprofit, a 501c3. There are a lot of things that you want to consider if you were to develop a product stewardship council in Hawaii. But and there's plenty of folks in all these different councils that are experts as well that could help assist you as well. Next slide. Now I'm ready for questions. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks Doug and Lucy. We're running a little bit behind, but we'd like to just move into any questions for our speakers. And maybe let's lead with any members of the task force first, and see if you guys have any questions, and then I'll open it up to questions from the public, and we'll try to wrap up Q&A by 10:15 so that we can get everybody a necessary bio break through this long meeting. So are there any task force members that have questions for Doug or Lucy? Comments or second the motions?
Not seeing any hands raised, but if you guys want to put something in the chat as well. Christine said, no questions, lots of comments. Christine,
Okay.
if you'd like to jot your comments down in the chat or
Yeah, everyone
out
just,
loud.
Christine, go ahead. If you want to take a couple of minutes, it's okay to take the time. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, I just really need to say that these 2 presentations that we just received are extremely biased, and we are not getting input from fence line communities, from organizations like the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, from Break Free from Plastic, from the groups, grassroots and well-organized groups like Greenpeace that are pushing against EPR. So basically what we have just been exposed to is a very strong public relations infused, corporate centric approach to managing packaging waste. And this is a real disadvantage for us. So I would like to say that we are not going to be able to get through this issue in one sitting. And I would strongly ask the Department of Health and whoever's putting this together to pull together another round of presentations where we could hear from those groups. As an example, there's a lot of discussion about recycling. Absolutely no mention at all that recycling plastic creates microplastics, that recycling of plastic concentrates toxic chemicals in the recyclate. No mention at all that PET, which is one of the main polymers that's used in plastic food packaging, has just been designated by the EPA as a material that poses an unreasonable risk when it's manufactured. So there's going to be a very strong push now to take PET off the market. And none of this is being brought up. None of this is being discussed here. And it's a huge disadvantage. Another kind of thing, brought up, oh, this program in California, $4 billion absorbed by the producers, they're going to pass that $4 billion on to consumers. And so we're not able to get into any of this aspect of the discussion because we are not being presented with this perspective. Another thing to consider is California has just done this with Bill 54. So maybe there's this idea, oh, we would want to do something similar in Hawaii. But the truth of it is, whatever the producers have to do to comply with Bill 54, they're not going to make different packaging for Hawaii. So if there's any upstream advantage to us in terms of less wasteful, less toxic, better manageable materials and packaging coming out of California, we're going to get those advantages. So this whole discussion is so limited, and I just can't, even begin. I mean, I could go on for a whole hour. Even this idea that we're going to start pouring money into plastic recycling or MRFs, the thing that's really going to address plastic pollution is a steep reduction in plastic production, 75% at least. So if we're going to get there, then why are we putting millions of dollars into recycling facilities or collection programs? These are going to be investments that are either going to be stranded assets, there'll be policy attached to it that will force us to continue to rely on plastic packaging. I mean, I'll just stop there because I think I've made my point. I'm, almost feeling like I want to beg Department of Health to please, please, please put together yet another round about packaging, invite these other voices that are strongly opposed to EPR as it's been styled today, producer responsibility organizations driven by corporations. This is just a way for us to get deeper into the take, make, waste paradigm. Plastic recycling is not an example of circularity. It's very dangerous. I'll just end it there.
Thank you, Christine. We've noted your points and your requests for additional presentations from different perspective. And so we can take that back as a team and sort out how that's going to manifest in subsequent convenings of this task force. Appreciate it. Were there any other members of the task force that wanted to ask questions of Doug and Lucy, or add response to Christine's comments?
Nicole has her hand raised.
Go ahead, Nicole, thanks.
Sure, I think this question is perhaps for Doug. The funds that industry is putting in to clean up, are those being leveraged for plastic credits, or the scheme has a couple other names where essentially it's like same idea as carbon credits. They can pollute as much as they want as long as they're putting money into cleaning it up. Is it a part of that sort of dynamic?
No, not to my knowledge. Nicole, it's a good question, but it is just a straight out fund that has been developed. It's Plastic Pollution Mitigation Fund that will be managed by the state. And it actually is not going to be managed by CalRecycle, who's going to be the oversight agency over the SB 54 program and also the PRO. This actually $500 million per year will actually be managed by the Cal EPA itself, the agency above CalRecycle. And distributed in accordance with appropriations at the state legislature level.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for our guest speakers? Any questions from members of the public that have joined us? Of our guest speakers?
Not seeing any.
Okay, and acknowledging
the comment in the chat echoing Christine's comments. Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, well, mahalo to our guest speakers for your time and sharing your work with the task force. And mahalo to the task force members and bringing their positions and understanding to this forum as well. This is a good discussion and we can carry it forward in subsequent meetings for sure. Let's give everyone a break. It's close enough to 10:15 to keep it rounded on the fives. So why don't we reconvene at 10:25 for the remainder of this meeting. And our guest speakers, thank you. If you want to hang out and listen to the rest of the meeting, you're more than welcome to. So thank you so much, and we'll meet back here in 10 minutes at 10:25, in 12 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you again for the opportunity.
Thanks, everyone.
Is everybody able to hear me okay? Wonderful.
So we will be starting in just 1 or 2 minutes. We're all just settling back into our seat. I hope everybody had a good bio break.
Are we, okay, it's, the audio's okay?
Yeah.
I don't recall hearing somebody coming so loudly through the owl.
I did a quick, I turned my audio on.
Okay.
And then I turned it off.
Okay, we're good?
Yeah. You don't mind just asking if people can hear typing?
All right, well, folks, welcome back. It's 10:26, and hope you had a good break. We're going to move on to the comparative analysis. And great, and so we're back up recording our meeting too?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. And as we're going forward now that we've reconvened, undoubtedly there'll be some technology kerfuffle. So if you hear typing or annoying feedbacks, will you just let us know, because we're not getting it on our side. So just keep us informed so that we can make the experience as quality as it can be for you all who are calling in. So let's move on to the comparative analysis. We'll hand off to Tetra Tech to lead that portion of the presentation.
Yes, thank you, Katie. So we will now be jumping into the next section of this meeting, comparative analysis. Going through what some other states in the U.S. are doing to target packaging materials. So as we discussed earlier during this meeting, the Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act would require producers with annual revenues greater than $1 million or who produce more than 1 ton of covered products to design, manage, and finance programs to collect and process this waste. Producers would cover the cost of waste management, cleanup, and awareness-raising measures, and as mentioned previously, the covered products would include packaging, containers, paper, and food service products, regardless of their ability to be recycled, composted, and their material type. Furthermore, 6 U.S. states have active EPR or similar packaging laws. So as Doug mentioned earlier in this presentation, California passed Senate Bill 54, requiring the state to reduce 25% of single-use plastics, recycle 65% of single-use plastics, and ensure 100% of single-use plastic or single-use packaging and plastic foodware are recyclable or compostable. The bill also establishes an EPR program for managing packaging and single-use plastic foodware products and requires producers to design, fund, and operate a statewide program to collect, recycle, or compost discarded products. And then as Doug also mentioned, it requires producers to join a producer responsibility organization, which California has joined Circular Action Alliance as their PRO. For Colorado, their Producer Responsibility Program for Statewide Recycling Act was signed into law in 2022 and establishes a statewide recycling system to help contribute towards a circular economy for recyclable materials. The law aims to reduce plastic waste, improve the state diversion rate, as well as reduce landfill disposal of recyclable materials. Packaging and printed paper producers are responsible for funding and recycling the program, which are built into producers' wholesale prices and distributed throughout the supply chain. In Maine, legislative document 54 shifts the responsibility and cost of managing packaging waste from municipalities to producers. And it also covers packaging materials such as plastic containers, cardboard boxes, and other non-recyclable materials. In New Jersey, manufacturers must meet post-consumer recycled content requirements for rigid plastic containers glass containers, paper and plastic carryout bags, as well as trash bags. And it also prohibits the sale of polystyrene loose-fill packaging. In Oregon, the Plastic Pollution and Recycling and Modernization Act was implemented to overhaul the outdated recycling system by building on local community programs, as well as leveraging the resources of producers to cover the cost of improvements. And this specific act covers packaging, printing and writing paper, as well as food service ware. And then lastly, we have Washington, Chapter 70A.245 of the 2021 Plastics Law, the Post-Consumer Recycled Content Law, requires certain producers to register within the state, pay annual fees, as well as include a minimum amount of recycled plastic in their product packaging. And as of 2023, this law applies to trash bags, plastic beverage bottles, as well as plastic bottles for personal care and household cleaning products. Producers that sell or distribute plastic trash bags within the state must also label packages with the name of the location of the producer, a uniform resource locator, or a QR code to a website with information. And in addition, the law aims to reduce the production of new plastic materials and incentivize the development of new markets for recyclable plastic within the state of Washington. Next slide. Regarding resource reduction alternatives, the state can promote local reduce and reuse efforts such as zero waste events. The County of Kauai has an extensive list of acceptable compostable alternatives to containers, utensils, cups, and stirrers on their website as well. So feel free to scan the QR code above if you would like to review that list. It's pretty extensive, lots of good info. In the past, County of Maui has also offered a free bring your own utensil kits with each purchase of a reusable stainless steel takeout container at participating restaurants. As you can see that flyer on the bottom right-hand side. Next slide.
One second, sorry, it's loading.
In California, Assembly Bill 619 was passed in 2019, allowing consumers to bring their own reusable food containers to be refilled by either the owner or operator of the facility or the consumer. And facilities may also accept return containers from consumers for reuse. In California, Marin County's reusable foodware ordinance requires reusables for on-site dining and allows consumers to bring their own takeout containers. Adopted in 2022, the law also requires compostable or recyclable aluminum containers for takeout if the customer does not bring their own and adds a fee to disposable cups. And it also bans plastic and plastic-lined paper takeout containers. And other cities in California, including Pacifica, Truckee, San Rafael, have also passed similar laws to require or encourage reusables for on-site dining. And we also discussed this House bill in Oregon at the statewide recycling task force meeting for High Five program. So in 2013, Oregon passed House Bill 2443, allowing customers to fill reusable growlers with wine and cider at restaurants, bars, grocery stores, or wine shops. So some alternatives to traditional packaging materials are listed here on the screen. So bamboo, which is the Earth's fastest growing plant, makes it an abundant resource and is commonly used for packaging products, including envelopes, boxes, retail bags, boxes, tissue, plates, trays, bowls, containers, lids, and cups. Banana leaves have been used also for food packaging, providing an eco-friendly alternative to paper and plastic food packaging. And then we also have coconut fiber, which is a versatile natural material derived from coconut husks and can be molded into several shapes and sizes to create packaging materials such as trays, containers, and cushioning pads. Coconut shells can also be repurposed into bowls or containers. We also have cornstarch packaging, which is a biodegradable packaging material that can replace polystyrene and plastic. Cornstarch packaging also includes packaging materials such as peanuts, trays, lids, bags, plates, and bowls. Hemp packaging is another sustainable alternative to certain packaging materials, including bowls, boxes, folding curtains, reusable totes, and hemp paper. Laula boxes are handcrafted by weaving leaves of the hala tree and can be used as a sustainable alternative to certain packaging materials such as plastic containers or cardboard boxes. Mushroom packaging is also sustainable and home compostable alternative to expanded polystyrene. Organic fabrics can be used to replace certain paper and plastic packaging products, including bags and wrapping paper. Reusable bags as an alternative to disposable bags can also encourage consumers to reuse their bags as they are often larger and sturdier than disposable bags, making them more suitable for carrying heavy items. Seaweed-based packaging can provide sustainable alternatives for plastic packaging products and includes items such as sauce sachets, edible single-use liquid packaging, disposable cups, biodegradable cardboard coating, compostable takeaway boxes, lids, bags, and films. Sheep wool, also an abundant natural resource as a byproduct of rearing sheep, can be used as an alternative to polystyrene and polyethylene foam to provide insulation. Sugarcane fiber is an excellent replacement for paper products as well as styrofoam and plastic packages. Some examples of sugarcane packaging include food packaging products such as cups, bowls, containers, trays, plates, and boxes. And we do have a few photos of each of these in the next few slides here. And then again, some of these topics were brought up at the High Five program meeting. So we just want to reiterate installing water bottle refill dispensers in public facilities would encourage individuals to bring and use reusable bottles as an alternative to single-use plastics. And then water dispensers have been commonly installed in airports, schools, and other public spaces. We also discussed PepsiCo's SodaStream Professional dispenser at that task force meeting on the High Five program. And this is a carbonated water dispensal. It also has a mobile app system that allows consumers to choose from different flavors, levels of carbonation, and even temperatures. And the neat thing about this tool is it also allows users to track hydration, how many plastic bottles have been saved, through a QR code bottle and a mobile app. Next slide. Grocery stores are also taking initiative to reduce packaging waste. As depicted on the left-hand side, some Whole Foods locations offer reusable clamshell containers for customers to store their food in. And then on the right-hand side, you can see some Sprouts locations offer reusable mason jars for food items such as legumes and nuts. And then these next couple of slides, we just have some examples of the alternatives that were previously listed. Next slide. For education and outreach opportunities, US EPA does have a webpage with several resources for students and educators on reducing, reusing, and recycling packaging materials. US EPA has also developed a model recycling program toolkit, which was designed to help states and local governments create effective programs for recycling, composting, reusing, and reducing waste. And materials in the toolkit can assist with increasing participation in recycling programs, as well as reducing contamination. Feel free to scan the QR code if you would like to get that toolkit. The state of Hawaii can also support local reduce and reuse efforts, such as educational programs and the development of educational resources for businesses as well as residents. In Honolulu, the city promotes commercial recycling through their Peers Consultants program. And this program was developed by the city and business community to enhance recycling resources available to businesses in an effort to divert more material from the landfill. Peer consultants from different businesses are available for free, and they can advise interested companies on starting recycling programs or purchasing recycled contact products. In addition, all public schools in Oahu have recycling collection programs, which are funded by the state through the Department of Education's refuse collection contract. And collection services are provided by private haulers. And furthermore, Honolulu also provides a $2,000 reimbursement in program for startup costs, and this is specifically for multi-unit properties looking to establish recycling programs for the collection of recyclables such as cardboard and paper, as well as bottles. City and County of Honolulu also have lots of tips on their website for reducing packaging waste, including buying in bulk, asking suppliers to minimize packaging, requesting orders to be shipped in returnable packaging, reusing incoming packaging, using newspaper and shredded office paper for packaging materials, as well as returning, reusing, and repairing wood pallets. The Kokua Hawaii Foundation is a nonprofit in Honolulu County, and this organization supports environmental education in schools and communities across Hawaii. The organization also has a 3Rs program, and this program supports on-campus recycling efforts by working with schools to strategize collection and redemption options. And they also host 3R school recycling drives at participating schools across the island. Another program that the organization runs is the Plastic Free Hawaii program, and this program seeks to empower and educate schools, businesses, and community members across Hawaii. And through this program, Kokua Hawaii offers school and community presentations, beach cleanups, event greening consulting, and partnerships with businesses, nonprofits, as well as the government. And students at participating schools can also participate in the Plastic Free Hawaii School Mural Contest, which encourages students to repurpose recycled plastics into art. The County of Hawaii periodically runs public education campaigns on proper recycling techniques. And according to their integrated solid waste management plan, the county also established a polystyrene reduction education and outreach program to not only educate the public about polystyrene food containers, but also to provide food service industry with resources. Recycle Hawaii is a nonprofit educational organization in Hawaii County that offers free recycling educational services for all Hawaii Island communities. And they have also partners with community members to organize cleanup events and provide education on how to recycle and divert collected materials as well. The County of Kauai has a dedicated webpage to plastics recycling and packaging reuse. And then, as mentioned earlier, they also have a list of acceptable compostable alternatives to containers and utensils on their website. And then in Maui County, the Maui Uliao Foundation is a non-profit organization that provides environmental education programs to Maui's youth. And this was also Another organization that was brought up in the High Five meeting, their Green Events program provides training, pre-event planning services, zero waste stations, and food scraps recycling services for events with as many as 10,000 attendees. And to date, over 9,000 pounds of recyclables have been collected through the Green Events program. And this program also features a reusable rental program for items such as cups, plates, bowls, and clamshells. Next slide. In California, the Producer Responsibility Organization, so in this case, Circular Action Alliance, they are required to fund and implement outreach and education programs in coordination with existing outreach programs. Municipalities implement local education programs and then they receive reimbursements for their expenses. And the PRO must develop a producer responsibility plan regarding Senate Bill 54 compliance. And the plan must also include efforts to use education and promotion to encourage proper participation in recycling, composting collection, as well as reuse and refill systems. In Colorado, House Bill 22-1355 requires the Department of Public Health and Environment to designate a nonprofit organization to develop and implement a statewide education and outreach program. The program will be designed to increase recycling as well as reuse of covered materials and include education and outreach on proper end-of-life management for these covered materials, the location and availability of recycling services under the program, and as well as contamination reduction. And in Washington, the Department of Ecology is responsible for providing a website with education and outreach resources with regulatory information regarding single-use plastic packaging to lodging establishments, consumers, and other interested individuals. We also just have a quick video on what a high school here in Oahu is doing.
Introducing Scrappers Union 96792, the company dedicated to making a positive impact on our Aina. Our mission is to empower the youth of Waianae and instill a commitment to sustainable waste management through resource recovery.
Our featured product, the Oil Change Box, is a game changer in responsible oil disposal. It's made from upcycled cardboard boxes and paper collected during our community cardboard shred day, creating a sustainable solution for all your oil change or oil disposal needs. Who is it for? The Oil Change Box is for every car owner, mechanic, and anyone concerned about responsible oil disposal. It's affordable and eco-friendly choice for all your oil changing needs.
Using the Oil Change Box is simple. Just strain your car oil or dump your used kitchen oil inside the box. Tie up the bag and throw the box away. It's a convenient and Aina-friendly, responsible way to handle oil waste here in our island home. What makes the Oil Waste Box great?
It's an eco-friendly solution that not only repurposes cardboard, but also supports local sustainability initiatives.
By choosing the Oil Change Box, you are contributing to a cleaner environment and a brighter future for our community.
of safer, more sustainable products. And last year, the EPA did award the University of Hawaii's Sea Grant College program with $2.1 million to help create a citywide reusable feedware system in Hilo. And this system will focus on training, technical assistance, as well as infrastructure. An additional $75 million have been allocated towards the EPA's Consumer Recycling Education and Outreach Grant Program. And this program provides funding towards public education regarding community recycling or composting programs, as well as increasing collection rates while decreasing contamination. The materials that are scoped within the grant program include aluminum and steel containers, glass, cardboard, paper, plastics, and organics, including wood pallets, among other materials. So Hawaii's Green Business Program is a free state program, and this program focuses on assisting and recognizing businesses that strive to operate in an environmentally and socially responsible manner. And this program is a partnership specifically with the Hawaii State Energy Office, as well as DOH and Board of Water Supply. And this program highlights businesses that are dedicated to sustainability, and their mission is to help businesses reduce waste, conserve energy, and preserve natural resources. And they do have a checklist for different types of businesses. So if you are interested, there is a QR code that you can scan on the right. In the city and county of Honolulu, approximately 160 households have access to curbside recycling, and they can recycle certain packaging materials in their blue carts for bi-weekly curbside collection. Acceptable items include metal cans, glass bottles and jars, newspapers, corrugated cardboard, plastic containers, and office paper. And according to the county's integrated solid waste management plan, they are also investigating options to expand the existing curbside recycling program to include households in manual collection areas. The city also services 2 blue bins located on the North Shore for use by residents. And in addition, they also provide the $2,000 reimbursement in program costs for multi-unit residents, as we discussed earlier. In Hawaii, Kauai, and Maui counties, there are no island-wide or large-scale curbside recycling programs currently being implemented. However, some companies do offer recycling collection services for a fee in limited areas for both residential and commercial customers. As an alternative to curbside recycling, Hawaii, Kauai, and Maui residents can also use county drop-off recycling bins to recycle certain packaging materials. For the county of Maui, they do have a couple of grant programs that we have previously discussed at other task force meetings. So there is a Green Grants Program, which allocates $100,000 for fiscal year 2024. And this is to support small-scale projects related to sustainability, environmental protection, natural resource protection, as well as conservation and restoration. And then the Recycling Grants Program allocates $500,000 for fiscal year 2024. And this would be to support projects related to landfill diversion, zero waste initiatives, education, equipment upgrades, program expansion, materials collection, and the collection and processing of waste resource materials. In California, the Recycled Fiber Plastic and Glass Grant Program aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by expanding the existing capacity or establishing new facilities within the state that use California-generated post-consumer recycled plastic, glass, or fiber. This could be such as cardboard or paper to manufacture into new products. The Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment administers 2 different waste diversion programs. One, the Recycling Resources Economic Opportunity Program, and then the second is the Front Range Waste Diversion Program. And then the Public Health and Environment Department also offers technical assistance for end market and municipal waste diversion planning through both of these programs. And then lastly on this list, we have Washington and their Department of Ecology's Waste Reduction and Recycling Education Grants Program provides funding to qualified local governments as well as nonprofit organizations. And this would be to fund local or statewide public education programs designed to support with contamination control, waste reduction, recycling or composting, or for the implementation of a contamination reduction and outreach plan. One second. So for free market solutions, in Hawaii, there are some local businesses that do accept newspaper to produce shredded paper products. Used primarily by local agricultural businesses for use in growing and shipping agricultural products. So here we have a couple of images as an example. So located in on the Big Island is Circle Pack, and this is an organization that works with local community members to shred cardboard to create soil for farmers. They also create compostable packaging, as well as garden and art supplies and other upcycled materials. And according to the founder, the organization has managed to shred over 22,000 pounds of cardboard, most of which has gone towards creating soil for local farmers. And located in Arizona, as you can see on the right-hand side, Circular Plastics Microfactory is a new plastics recycling and remanufacturing microfactory that will convert sorted plastics into pellets, which will be used to create new products. At the moment, the facility is only able to process plastics types 2 and 5, which does include food packaging, but it does have the capability to expand and include types 1 and 4 plastics, which would include water bottles as well as shopping bags in the future.
Okay, thank you, Gisela, for that presentation. Before we open up for the public, I just wanted to acknowledge there was conversation in the chat. Thank you, Nicole and Christine. When we open for task force comments, if you would like to reiterate the highlights of those points for the group and those who weren't able to keep up with the chat, that would be awesome. But first, I'd like to open it up to any members of the public, guests that are non-task force members to share your thoughts on the presentation that Gisela just walked through, and any opportunities or solutions that you really promotable, implementable here in Hawaii that you'd like to acknowledge. This is your opportunity to comment on that. I don't see any hands up on our Teams monitor, which means that we can just roll into our task force members. I first noticed Nicole noting that something was missed and then there was a subsequent conversation. I was wondering if Nicole, you wanted to kind of kick that off, or if you feel like your comments and links are sufficiently documented in the chat, that's okay too.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
You're fine.
Great. I believe I've offered this in the past, and I'm wondering if there's some kind of sunshine law issue, which has yet to be clarified with me. But I mean, the only thing our organization does is work on waste reduction, specifically in the city and county of Honolulu, but we also have broad partnerships throughout Hawaii. And I've noticed in several presentations that we're missing some of the really important grassroots work that's going to be difficult to connect with if you're not a part of the ecosystem here. So because this stuff is a part of the public record, it's pretty critical that if we're listing potential local solutions, that we actually have the full solution base listed. There's so much that already exists here that we can be building from, that we can be focusing funding to. We should always pull inspiration from elsewhere. And I'm really happy you guys brought in what California is doing and what other states are doing. But we have so much happening here that just needs attention and funding. And the last thing I want to throw in is, pulling in organizations like Kukua Hawaii Foundation that is doing incredible work. I wonder if you sat down and had a conversation with them about what it's actually going to take to get their solution sets amplified. They're doing a lot of work, but they need funding and support. So I guess what I'm also pointing out is we have to contextualize that as we bring in these examples, they're not necessarily able to fully function and have impact, even though they're working towards it, because we need to provide funding and support. That is my comment. And thank you for pulling all this stuff together for us to discuss. There are reusable systems operating here already that we really need to be uplifting. Thank you.
Thank you. We can work towards acknowledging that more thoroughly going forward as well. Other task force members, Christine has her hand raised. Great, thank you. I can't track the hand raised. Christine, go ahead.
Okay, yep, thank you so much for highlighting what's going on in other places. It's always inspirational. Sometimes people are a little bit afraid when they see that, it's going on elsewhere, they're encouraged. In the alternative sections, you failed to mention PHB. PHB is an incredible new resource that's a true substitute for plastic. The reason it's so important for us too is because this technology would be really well suited for Hawaii. So I would ask the consultants to look into New Light technology, and which also happens to be a carbon capture technology. And it would be really great for us to get a presentation from New Light Technology. All the more reason to have another go around on packaging. There's been no discussion about glass, and the idea that's been floated for a while to increase the deposit fee on non-high five containers from 1.5 cents to 5 cents. That's something that was proposed. We really should be discussing that. Glad you highlighted Circle Pack, and glad you had the video from the Scrappers Union. They're affiliated with Hanai Kaia'ulu, which is a partner Recycle Hawaii is working very closely with. But as an example, on one of their Sustainable Saturdays programs that they just had in Hilo, they collected 1,500 pounds of waste cardboard that would have gone to the landfill, that would have gone to make methane in the landfill in 1 3-hour period. So I think it's important to highlight the work that they're doing. And yeah, you failed to mention Recycle Hawaii. We got a $1.56 million grant from the program that you talked about, the Recycling Education and Outreach. So I think this is just further argument to be made for a redo, like another iteration on this topic, because there's a lot of things that have been left out. And but not to be ungrateful to the work that has been done. It's a big topic and a big project. But again, something that would be extremely helpful for us here in Hawaii is to start to discuss these differences. You will have some bills being presented at the state level that would advance issues, policy around packaging, and you have a group like ours, Recycle Hawaii, testifying against these bills. And this really needs to be sorted out. I don't see the state really making any progress on packaging waste, on EPR. especially around downstream measures until this gets sorted out. Again, I will talk about Senate Bill 1458. That was a bill that was strictly aimed at reuse solutions. So we all talk reduce, reuse, and then boom, right to recycle. Like it's just enough to give lip service to those two first R's and then just dive right into the recycling. So the purpose of this bill was like, no, we're going to stop doing that. If reuse is a priority, we are going to take it out. We are going to deal with it on its own. It's a strategy that makes sense because if there's packaging waste that can be eliminated through reuse strategies, why would you even talk about standing up a recycling plant if there's not going to be packaging to recycle? So it's a really good strategy. The issue was brought up about local fruit producers not being able to take advantage of reusable systems. This bill would pay for that, and it would come from the top producers of fast-moving consumer goods. There was a slide when the presenter was talking, and you saw all the different logos. Those are the producers that would be impacted by this bill, by that approach. They would pay into a fund. Only producers that have a global market share of $500 million or more would pay into it. That is not a single Hawaii company, so no burden is being put on Hawaii companies. That money would go into a fund that would be used to stand up the reuse infrastructure. And that reuse infrastructure is the same infrastructure we need to produce food locally, package it in reusable containers, and start to build that reliant food production system. I'm really surprised that no mention of this has been brought up during this discussion except by me. And so again, I'm going to ask that we have a chance to talk about this again. Another thing that was missing is at the very end, you're talking about someplace on the mainland that wants to set up a recycling plant. We have a company here, Waikea Water, that is proposing to build a recycling plant on our island, on Hawaii Island, that's going to process up to 52 million pounds of plastic in single-use bottles, would be the feedstock per year. We are pushing very hard against that. We're not in favor of that at all. Why aren't we in this group discussing this Malama One facility? I think Department of Health needs to ask them to come to make a presentation to the task force, and we need to get into these details. What we've learned, for every 100 pounds of plastic that goes into a plastic recycling facility, 30 pounds is lost. 70 pounds of recycled PET comes out at the end. Where did that 30% go? 52 million pounds, that's like 16 million pounds of plastic that has to get processed as waste. Where is it going? We're being told, oh, don't worry, we have filters. Okay, that's an awful lot of filtering. How much do the filters cost? Who's going to monitor it? And the other thing is that we know these plants are generating microplastics. Okay, you can capture microplastics in some kind of fancy, expensive filter, go for it. But what about the nanoplastics? It's not like when you're shredding plastic, they have some kind of an agreement. Okay, guys, we're only going to shred down to this diameter size and be microplastics. No, they're generating nanoplastics too. So all of these issues that are really pertinent to Hawaii have not been brought to this discussion except through Nicole and myself, because we're very active in this arena. And I'll say it one last time and then I got to dash off to another meeting. We need another go around on this subject. There was an awful lot of discussion about newspaper, office paper. That's really not what we're talking about. We're talking about packaging and we're talking about plastic pollution. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christine. We're hearing you.
Thank you.
Were there other task force members that wanted to have a comment on the proposed solutions that were discussed so far?
No hands are currently raised.
Okay. Just acknowledging again, Christine, your comments, and the team will circle back and work to address the conversation gaps that you will have identified. I think if there aren't any more comments from the task force, we could go into the meeting summary. and then talk about next steps, which includes a little bit of conversation about future subjects to discuss in subsequent meetings. So if the Tetra Tech staff are ready to talk about the meeting, go through the meeting summary, we could do that, or we could offer another break if you folks need a little time to just walk through the notes.
Maybe a 5-minute break.
If the task force allows it, we'd like to take just a 5-minute break to summarize what we've heard. Oftentimes there's a little more conversation that allows our team to compile the notes and reflect them back to you. So it's 11:12, I'll round up to 11:15. Let's meet back at 11:20 and we'll go through a quick recap on what was discussed and then and talk about next steps and action items going forward. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. We'll be starting in just another minute, so if you could return back to your phone or your computer, and we're at the home straightaway, so almost there. We appreciate your attentiveness and your comments throughout. And also, if this break has given your brain any energy and you have any comments on the potential solutions discussed, we do still have time in the agenda for that if you'd like to bring that up. If not, once we reconvene, we'll go into our meeting summary. Yes, come back to us and we'll start in the next 2 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, back online. Thanks everybody for allowing us that time to break and consider the comments that came from the task force and work on at least a quick schedule plan going forward. We'll hand it off to Stella for a meeting summary, and then we'll talk about next steps and have Department of Health step in there, and then talk about our 10th topic for this task force. So Stella, take us away.
Thank you, Katie. So to summarize or recap the potential solutions that we've heard from the public and task force members. So we heard an emphasis or highlighting the need to shift away from single-use plastics and other packaging materials, as well as focus on highlighting local reusable solutions in Hawaii. We also heard about the need to hear from other organizations who focus on reuse and shift away from EPR. There were a few organizations that were mentioned in the chat, such as the Fence Line Wash, Descendants Project, Institute for Local Self-Resilience, Greenpeace, Center for International Environment Law, Circular City Coalition, and High Ambition Coalition, which are engaged in the INC process and are actively negotiating a treaty to end plastic pollution. We also heard using PHB as another alternative to packaging materials that was not previously listed. We also heard about the potential development for a new MRF in Hawaii, as well as Senate Bill 1458, which was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. And this bill would establish an EPR program. And then we also heard from others about the need to look into carbon capture technologies as well. So Zara, is there anything that I might have missed?
I think that covers it all. So we would definitely update our packaging solutions during our next meeting, but I wanted to emphasize again that, we are working on an integrated solid waste management plan update. So the recommendations that would be identified within the realm of solid waste management. Thank you.
And then just to add to the summary. First, we are taking notes, and this meeting is being recorded, and the chat comments are being copied down so that we can do a proper follow-up on the great comments that we got from the task force members. Thank you so much. On our next slide, do we have one more opportunity for the task force to chime in? Or are we on to the next steps? Okay.
We're on next steps, but
Okay.
they can chime in if you'd like to open it up.
No, I'd like to stick with the
Okay, thank you.
agenda. I just got a little lost in my own notes there. Okay, so let's talk about next steps. I'll hand off to Lane from Department of Health, who is leading our effort. Lane, go ahead and share your thoughts on comments received and next steps.
Thank you, Katie. Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to, let's see.
Christine's?
Yes, thank you, sorry.
No.
So Christine's and Nicole's comments and requests. So as Cesar and Katie noted just now, rest assured that all our discussion materials have, are recorded, are part of the meeting process, the meeting record. I apologize for some of those obvious omissions that you folks did contribute notes. And so those will be included in the documentation. And as far as, us missing churches and or organizations that are working on, either EPR or alternate approaches, non-EPR approaches, I guess. I had a little bit of a conversation with Cesar, and we do want to make sure that we represent the full range of approaches that are discussed. So I think what we're going to do is have Tetra Tech circle back with Nicole and Christine in the time between before our next meeting and get some further input, make sure that we're covering everything that you folks are aware of and have to offer, and we'll incorporate that into the meeting materials for the next meeting, where we're going to have the wrap up on the packaging session at the start of the next meeting. So maybe we'll look at beefing that up, giving a little bit more time to that, to make sure that we cover all of the missed information adequately. So I just wanted to offer that up. Thank you.
So the team will look at readjusting our next meeting a little bit to accommodate greater discussion on this topic and more information on this topic as the task force members brought up. I think we can move on to
one final item. So just want to follow up on Lane's statement. So yes, Christine and Nicole, please provide us, both Gisela and I, the information, and we will definitely include it. We really appreciate any input. Your input is very valuable, so please provide.
Okay, and then reminder to the consultant team for Sunshine Law, if you're connecting with those task force members, just do it on an individual basis and don't convene them together.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up. That way we don't get into any
Great.
Sunshine Law issues. Thank you.
So just one more thing
okay,
regarding next steps and action items before we move on to the 10th topic. So as others have mentioned, we'll be compiling all this information received today for consideration in the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan update, as well as the summary wrap-up of packaging at our next task force meeting. So that meeting is scheduled for May 2nd, and it will focus on carpet and mattresses. So we will have 2 topics for that meeting. That means that there will be no task force meeting for the month of April. That's all I have.
Thank you. That was important information. May 2nd, and we'll be sending out a meeting poll for that convening of the task force. So when we scoped this project, there were specific areas, topic areas that the team was asked to cover over the course of these task force convenings and the Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan. It reserved some open space for a potential 10th topic. And so what we did is we offered a poll to the task force members, an anonymous poll to the task force members to get back to the consultant team about potential 10th topic to discuss. And these were some of the solid waste stream topics that were first suggested by task force members, and then we took.
No, this is the list of the.
Sorry.
So this is the list of what DOH has identified as the solid waste stream topics, and then the next slide is the.
Sorry, yeah, I got ahead of myself in presenting. So the previous slide was the list of topics that the team was assigned to pursue, leaving space available for a potential 10th topic. We distributed a poll for task force members. Task force members could not see each other's responses. They all went to Sunny, and we had a multi-topic tie to those to the poll. I guess I'll hand off to Cesar if there's anything that you wanted to say about why we have disaster debris highlighted.
Yes, so like Katie was mentioning, we created a poll. Before creating that poll, we reached out to task force members so that these topic items could be identified. So that was the initial step, receiving from the task force what the potential items would be. Then it was put on a vote, and we have identified disaster debris as the, I guess, the 10th topic. I will provide some additional reasoning on why disaster debris is a topic to consider as part of this Integrated Solid Waste Management Plan update. First and foremost, we are not, everybody has the potential to being affected by disasters. County of Maui, in recent history, had the Lahaina fires that created a lot of impact in lives and in waste management. So it's one of the biggest reasons disasters are occurring more and more. Also, the EPA has provided guidance for solid waste infrastructure for recycling or Swiffer grant recipients to include requirements for disaster debris management as a topic of discussion in updated solid waste management plans that are being developed as part of the Swiffer grants in many states. So that's another reason. So in addition, as climate-related disasters increase in frequency and severity, the need to maximize recycling and reuse of disaster debris to support keeping valuable materials out of the landfill is becoming increasingly important. So for those reasons, and also the poll we took in the vote, disaster debris has been identified as the 10th topic. So if there are any questions or concerns, we would definitely take that into consideration. You could let us know at this time, I suppose, if there's any issues or concerns with this topic, and we could consider that as well. So if anyone has any issues or concerns with that topic, please let us know. Otherwise, we would schedule disaster debris management as a topic for the the meeting that would occur in a few months from now. I think it's
Final meeting.
our final meeting, our 10th meeting. So with that, if there's any questions, please advise.
Okay, so if there aren't any comments on the disaster debris subject for our 10th topic, we'll plan to proceed in developing that line of research. If there is a concern or issue, task force members are certainly welcome to email them to Lane. I think would be the most appropriate course of action. We have some time to adjust if need be. Our next convening is May 2nd, as Gisela noted, and we're scheduled to talk about mattress and carpet with an augmented wrap-up from our normal 30-minute wrap-up, where we'll spend a little more time on the packaging discussion. If there are no additional questions at this time from the task force members, we'll do an early adjournment and allow you all to get on with earlier lunch. Lane, did you have any final comments, or how would you like to close us?
Just final thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, David, for joining us in the flesh online once again. And yeah, everyone else on the rest of the committee and public, thank you very much for joining in.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.